I had played close to 1,000 games, in the National Hockey League, and I have great memories. But if I wrote a book, probably the first 100 pages would be on a Toronto Marley team of that year. It was just, it was tremendous. It really was. Well, the 1964 Cup is it's really funny because I go back a little earlier than that. I came there the year before when the Toronto Marlies were kind of in the house league, and we played against Markham and Nob Hill Farms. And I hurt my knee in December, and I went back to Winnipeg, and not knowing, I was a transfer from Winnipeg that year before, so my year was pretty well finished around January 1 of the previous year. So next year they were building this team to go into the Ontario Junior League, and I wasn't even sure I'd get an invitation back, so because of the knee, and I mean, how much could I have shown? So I did go back. I was invited back, and we joined. We had no idea what kind of a team we were going to have. We had Jim Gregory was the coach. Grant Moore was the captain. Gary Suitcase Smith was the goalie. So we had no idea. You get a bunch of guys together. A lot. They probably knew each other a lot better. I didn't know basically any of them because very few were on that team I was with that short stay the year before. Very few of them came over from that Marley team to the team that joined the Ontario Junior League. So we were just a bunch of guys with Jim Gregory, the coach, and I lived in a boarding house with Ma Alec, her name, and she was a Polish landlady, and we got along real well. Obviously, my last name and the way she cooked and the things she made. Maybe that's the reason I had a good year. I had the food that I was used to growing up on. So we went out and just played hockey. And I remember getting there, and they said to me, the lines were Ron Ellis was going to be on my right side, and they said, we got a guy named Wayne Carlton. He's going to be on your left side. He's 17 years old. And somebody's whispering to me that they think he's probably the best junior hockey player in Canada. And I look at him, he's like 6'2", about 210 at 17. And basically, he was that good that he could probably take the puck behind his own net and go through the whole team. That's how good he was. And he was rated probably the number one in Canada, And they put us together. And never played with Ron Ellis before, never played with Wayne. In fact, I didn't even know these guys. And God, we went on and had great years. I mean, I don't know. I got over 100 points. I think Ronnie Ellis got something like 47 goals. Wayne was 47 plus goals. So we're all in around the 50 goal mark, all around the 100 points. And I don't know. We just worked off each other so well. And everybody we played, we seemed to win. I mean, on that particular year, I think we played 56 games, and we won 40. I think we tied 9, and we lost 7. So out of 57 games, or 56 games, we lost 7. So we had a good team. Everything some guys went to school, some guys had odd jobs, and everything just fit perfectly. And, we played against some pretty good teams in the playoffs. And I've had people tell me that, when you rate the Memorial Cup teams of all time, you could put that one in the top 5 or 6. So I still have great memories. We had a reunion not too long ago, a few years back. I think 90% of the guys did show up. We're obviously a lot older than we still had some good stories, and it was a real bonding experience, and just some great memories winning that Memorial Cup. Jimmy was very passive. He wasn't a lot older than we were. I did not know that at the time, and the funny story about Jim Gregory is when I got there, I didn't have a car. I come from Winnipeg, and my transportation was all basically public transportation, and every time I've mentioned this to him before, but a funny thing is I says, Jimmy, I don't have a car. I mean, it's, getting around and taking the streetcar in Toronto, and taking the subway, it's all good. But once in a while, I like to have, a nice car of my own. So he spoke to his wife, and they had a black Volkswagen at the time. And he says, Pete, I'm going to let you take my wife's car. And you can drive it. For the season, you take the wife's car. It's a Volkswagen. If it's one of these, you have to shift the gears. They didn't have no automatic transmission. And I always remember to this day, at the end of the season, I got a big scrape on the door. I believe it was the driver's door, and I got a big dent in it. And I was driving around with it. And at the end of the season, I had to hand it in to him, obviously. And when I came to give him the keys, I says, Jimmy, your Volkswagen's parked right next to Maple Leaf Gardens on the west entrance over there, and I parked the car so the dent would be, he wouldn't, when he opened the door, I think maybe it would have been on the passenger side, I'm not sure, but I did park so the dented part would be facing the building, so he wouldn't see it at first, and boom, it took off. And I remember a couple of weeks later, he called me, Winnipeg, he said, what, Hey, listen, what you do to my car? I saw it, Jimmy. I got a little dent on it and blah blah. He goes, listen, we won the cup. Good luck to you in your career. But he ran a pretty good ship. We had a captain. We had leadership, and we had a lot. The big thing with that team that not only did we win, but we had a lot of fun. I mean, we'd go on the road sometime. We were probably a lot more mature for our age. We were all 19, 20, but I think we acted a lot more, a lot more responsible, a lot more mature. So it's just a bunch of guys, and you throw guys together. You throw it in the air and you see how it lands, and when it all stuck together pretty good. But it was Jim Gregory who ran the practices, and anytime we had to get reprimanded for something we didn't do right, he was an honest guy. And to this day, in 2017, when I look at, I've been around a lot of people in hockey, Emil Francis of the world, and so many great individuals. And in the top 5, I put Jim Gregory as one of the guys I respect as the most. He did a great job with us that year. Well, not really, but I suggested a number of years ago that we should have a reunion, a 50-year reunion. So that would have been in 2014, and it came to be. We went and saw we were introduced at the Toronto Maple Leaf game. And we went up to the CN Tower where Grant Moore, who our captain at that time is now an attorney, so I guess you have to have a little pull to get up to the CN Tower in Toronto. He got us up there, and we had a great union. I think Gary Smith was the only one, Rod Sealing. There was a couple that did not show up, but St. Laurent was there, and Britt Selby showed up. Ronnie Ellis was there. Wayne Carleton showed up. Thanks, Wayne, by the way, for picking up that dinner tab over at Wayne Gretzky's. That was very nice. And we all got together. And Jack Chip Chase, who I remember Jack so vividly. He was. I even told the story, and with Jack Chip Chase. Jack was not exactly the Brad Pitt of the hockey world. He was a rough-looking guy, rugged-looking guy, and we were all single at the time. Obviously, we're young guys, and after the games on Sundays, the family would be waiting for you outside the locker room. And every Sunday, we'd walk out the locker room, be family or a friend or a neighbor, whoever you gave your tickets to. And every Sunday, Jack Chip Chase used to have this beautiful woman waiting for him all the time. And, and about halfway through, there was another one, a different one. And, I mean, these are gorgeous. And we're saying, Jack, what's the secret, man? Is it your aftershave or anything? And I saw Jack... about a couple of years when we had a reunion, I mentioned that to him, and he got a big laugh out of it. He's married now, and his wife went, "What?" Kind of thing. But that's the kind of fun we had back in those days. And Gary Suitcase Smith was our goalie. He came on to St. Mike's, and the thing I remember of Gary went on to have a very good professional career. But what Gary Smith would do between periods, he sweat so much that he would take all his gear off. Take it all off. He'd be sitting there naked in the locker room, waiting to change, and you'd get a 5-minute warning to go on the ice, and you get a 3-minute warning. Well, at 3 minutes, he'd start getting dressed, and then a 1-minute warning means you better head onto the ice. And I can't remember how many times you got to knock on the door from the linesman. Are you guys coming out or not? Because, the goalie leads the way onto the ice, and he's half dressed. So I'm saying, we're going to get a delay of the game penalty kind of thing. But, each individual had a special personality. Everybody had a different character, and we had fun. I mean, we went to have a bachelor party sometimes. We were a little underage, but we snuck in a few Molsons there. But we had a fun group of guys, and we got back. That reunion was just great. Like I said, we went to Maple Leaf Gardens. We were introduced, and the next day we went to the Toronto Marlies game, but the American Hockey League, and we were introduced there too. So they did a try. I got to commend the Toronto Maple Leafs and Brendan Shanahan, who helped put that all together. Just terrific. Andre Champagne came up from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Wayne Carleton's somewhere in the woods where he lives now. I think he came out of Beaton, Ontario, and God knows where that is. But all of us came together, and it was really, really good. And I had played close to 1,000 games, in the National Hockey League, and I have great memories. But if I wrote a book, probably the first 100 pages would be on a Toronto Marley team of that year. It was tremendous. It really was. Well, we had to go through a couple of teams. I believe it's Niagara Falls. We played first. They had Ron Schock, great player. I believe either Dougie Favell or Bernie Perrant was one of those two was their goalkeeper. So we beat them. Then we went on to beat the Montreal Canadian Juniors, who had, we talk about guys who made the NHL on that team. I mean, you go on paper and look at those two teams, they had everybody. I mean, the Cornelius of the world and the Savards, they had it all. We beat them. And then we went to play North Bay Trappers, and I remember we beat them. And then we played against Scotty Bowman had a team in Quebec, and somehow we played them. And when we played them the first game, they played that neutral trap, which exists now, but I think he invented it. It was dump the puck in to our end, and one guy would go into forecheck, and four guys would stand in center ice, and we'd say, like, what's going on? So we had to get through Scotty Bowman, and we ended up beating him. And then I remember the Memorial Cup started late. It was like in May, I think it started, and there was some conflicts there about the dates and everything like that. I mean, I don't remember, 50 years about every game, but I remember I think the first game or two was pretty close, and then they were talking about moving it to Kitchener because there was some conflict there with Maple Leaf Gardens, but that was all straightened out, and we went on and we beat the Edmonton Oilers in straight games. And I remember very distinctly they had Max Mestensik. He went on to play with the Boston Bruins. A fellow named Butch Paul, who was unfortunately killed in a car accident, was an excellent player. Fran Huck, who was an import. They brought him, Edmonton brought him in from one of the other junior teams. They were allowed that. And one player on that team that was on that team that I still once in a while give a little ribbing to, and hey, we beat you that year, didn't we, was Glenn Sather, who's now the president of the New York Rangers. So he was on that Edmonton Oilers team. So it was mid-May, the sun was shining, it was 80 degrees, and here we are winning this crazy Memorial Cup. So it was fantastic. I have not seen it, no. I don't even know where it is. I should have brought it, I guess, but we got a ring for that, Memorial Cup ring that I still have. I mean, I wear my Stanley Cup ring just to tell people stories, because I do a lot of public, I go speaking to groups, and sometimes you got to, bring up a subject so you can talk about something. But I still have that Memorial Cup ring, and I remember we had a convertible, and there was Susan Foster, was a dear friend up in Canada. I believe it was Britt Selby was driving the car, and we just drove up and down Yonge Street with the Memorial Cup in our hand, and people are like, I think we only got 3,000 or 4,000 people coming to the games. So I think, it was the Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup that year. So we were kind of an afterthought. But I remember I still have a picture of me holding the cup, Susan Foster sitting in the back seat, and Britt Selby driving the car, and we're driving up and down Yonge Street with the Memorial Cup. And people are looking at us like, oh, okay, way to go. So, but I have not seen the cup, and I have not seen my name on it. And if and when I go to Toronto, if that's where it is, I'd like to see it someday. Yeah, I'd love to see it. It was a great year. It's, I came from Winnipeg, and they contacted me a couple of years before and said, look, do you want to come play for Toronto, because that's where the best junior team is. And I was 16, 17 at the time, very reluctant to leave home. I'm going to a big city, and I didn't want to go at first, but obviously one of the best moves I ever did. And the first year was tough. I got hurt, like I mentioned. Next year we put it all together. Jim Gregory, we had a statistician, we had good goalkeeping, and we had 3 good lines in that line. That's, Ronnie Ellis, Wayne Carlton, and Pete Stemkowski. I mean, that's just put us together at training camp. We clicked all 40-goal scorers, and we had a lot of fun. Winning is a lot of fun, and that's the memories I have. And you can mention anybody's name to me today, the Jack Chip Chases, the Ray DuPonts. I don't want to leave Barry Watson, who's deceased, Nick Harbrick, another gentleman who passed away, was Polish descent, and I remember his family would invite me over at Sunday dinner, and we had the usual, the stuffed cabbage and the pierogies and stuff like that. So all the guys, and that was 50 some odd years ago. I still have memories of each and every one of them, and it's certainly, when you talk about having a hockey career and some of the highlights, winning the Stanley Cup obviously was terrific. Some great years here with the New York Rangers, but the one that started it all was, that Memorial Cup with the Toronto Marlies. That's just absolutely stands out in my mind.